All right, I know your time is valuable. If you're on a time crunch, this is going to be the short version. It's more worth it to just go with the HD knuckles instead of the non-HD ones. Those are really hard to find. The rear-wheel drive non-HD knuckles will not work. I'll go over that in more detail if you want to keep watching, but they will not work. It's more worth it to go with the HDs and just convert the tie rods in some way so that they work with the original linkage, as you can see mine is. Again, I will go over this more in the video if you keep watching, but for the short version, just do the HD knuckles, deal with the tie rods, it's more worth it. For those of you that are still here, this is my 95 K2500 Suburban. Used to have a 6.5 in it, it's got a turbo 5.3 in it now. I'm not trying to brag on it, I'm just telling you what's in it. So, did the GMT800 brake upgrade with the knuckles. I could not find, I watched LT Tolman's video. I'm not bragging on, I'm not dissing on him at all. I'm just trying to fill in information gaps that people may have. So I'm sure there are more people like me out there that tried this and were in the dark about this, at least this question. So I could not, I originally went with the non-HDs because of the tie rod, topic. They just bolt right in. They're not bigger like the HDs. So I got those. I could not find any 4x4 trucks anywhere. You can't buy them aftermarket, new, OE, new, whatever. You're down to just finding a parts truck. I couldn't find any for months. I could find the rear-wheel drive ones. I didn't know what the difference was. And service info, the part number is different. They look pretty much the same though. And I asked, I put comments out on different videos, including LT's video about when he did the swap in his Suburban. I didn't even get any interaction. Couldn't find anybody talking about it, anything. So I'm left in the dark. I figured, what the heck, I'll be the guinea pig, and I tried them. These are off of a rear-wheel drive 2000 Silverado 2500, and I found the difference after putting them on. So the brake rotors, I went to slide them on as I was done, and they hit the caliper bracket on the backside. So they were going back too far. They weren't sitting out far enough. So in a pinch to get it off the lift, I had to get some little wheel spacers and shave them down, because obviously they are meant to go on the outside, not on the inside of a brake rotor. So that was very much of a pain in the butt. It worked though, but then of course, now that's lug centric, not hub centric, and I'm sure you guys have seen videos of guys towing, and they have those big stupid wheel spacers that are lug centric presumably, and the studs break and it's a nightmare. And I didn't want to deal with that, so I figured out I should fix that. The other thing too is the angle on the tie rods was insane. So you can see the angle of them right now. Obviously the truck's in the air. When it was on the ground with the non-HD knuckles, that was about what the tie rod angle was on the ground. And lower control arm's level, just down a tiny little bit. Upper arm was actually up just a tiny little bit. And the tie rods were about like that. The bump steer was wicked. It was not good. If you look at them, where the upper ball joint is, so you look at the ear for the upper caliper bracket bolt and where the upper ball joint goes. All right, you got that? That's an HD knuckle, right? These are HDs. Now look at the old one. This is from a non-HD, way up there. So the HDs, ironically, are actually more similar to the original OBS knuckles in terms of how the upper ball joint, where it sits, where the tie rods sit. And matter of fact, the tie rods, so you see how that's like in the middle between these two bolt holes for the hub bearing. Look at the HDs. It's way up, it's by like the top bolt, and that's how the OBS knuckles are. So given the fact that, at least in my experience, the 4x4 non-HDs knuckles are freaking impossible to find. You can't get them new, there's no reproductions or anything. It's just like you got to find a parts truck. The two-wheel drive ones, you get at, I don't know if the wheel bearing hub could have been different part, and that could have been my problem, because I got ones from a 2003 or whatever. I think they're a different part number, but I'm not going to look into that right now. I don't, That aside, you're also dealing with that stuff. So, And the other thing is the HD knuckles. You can get these anywhere. These are the same 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive. These are actually off of a 2-wheel drive. It was a O2 Avalanche or whatever. But yeah, they're the same thing. The brake rotors are the same. The calipers are the same. The wheel bearing hubs, aftermarket. The rear-wheel drive ones have a hole in them too. Most of them. That's the same. Lower control arms are the same. A lot of them actually had torsion bars, which I thought they were all coil springs for the longest time. Apparently that was wrong. The more you know. Obviously tie rods are the same. You got to ream the ball joint hole, either upper ball joint hole, either way. So yeah, so if you ran those, you'd be having bump steer, or you'd have to fix the bump steer by flipping the tie rod over or doing some wacky crap, which I tried and I screwed those up. So this is, in my opinion, this is probably a lot easier to deal with putting the HD knuckles on, the tie rods on, rather than instead of everything else. And you can actually get these HD knuckles aftermarket. You can get new ones, TRQ or A1 Auto or 1A Auto, pretty much anywhere. And they're not super expensive. So if you can't find any at your local junkyard, you can, you have a few bucks, you can just buy them online. Same thing, but it doesn't matter if it's 2-wheel, 4-wheel. The thing I forgot to put in when I was talking about the tie rods is obviously this is modified and this is a very vital steering component. So, and I did not look to see if there are any ones that you can buy that basically do the same thing, step this 11/16 by 18 thread down to whatever, probably 12 millimeter thread or whatever the HD tie rods are, the thread. I can fabricate stuff. I do it quite often, so I decided to just do this myself. Of course, if you are not comfortable with doing this, and I'm not telling anybody to do this is completely at your own risk. If you are not comfortable with doing this and something breaks, that is completely your fault. You could easily kill someone or hurt someone or hurt yourself, or even, hurt or kill yourself also. If this fails while you're driving, especially if you're towing a big trailer, imagine that nightmare. So I'm not telling anybody to do this modification here, but if you do, this is completely at your own risk. And you have to be very, very careful. If you are not comfortable with doing that, then you probably shouldn't be doing it to begin with, at least for this. The rest of it's just bolt on. But yeah, I just want to put that out there. So, if one of you guys that thinks you know how to weld does this and causes a lot of damage, can't blame me. Do not blame me. I took a threaded section of the original outer tie rod and I cut it off, and I drilled a hole, about a 1/2 inch hole, about 3/4 of an inch deep in it, inside of that part. And I took an inner tie rod from an HD truck and cut the threaded section off of that. A certain amount. You got to mock it up to the original tie rod so you can keep the lengths similar so that it'll actually work. And then what I did was they actually telescoped together the HD inner part of it and that old outer, and then welded the end of it all the way around, and then drilled one hole straight through, so essentially 2 holes, and did some plug welds. There's another one on the other side, and you can see this one. And I have a feeling this will be good enough for the long term. I don't wheel the truck or anything, or rock crawl with it or nothing, so it's not like it's getting the most abuse anyway. And you know how skinny those inner tie rods on the HDs are. So I think it'll be fine. It's been fine so far. So yeah, I can't really think of much else, but that was the main thing I just want to put this video out for. And I don't really do YouTube at all, so excuse my mannerisms and professionalism about the how the quality of the video is. But as for everything else, the brake hoses, all this stuff, shocks and X, Y, and Z, the other details that LT put out are definitely accurate. That stuff worked out really well. It worked out fine. Minimal modifications, a little adapter there and whatever. Yeah, that was the one thing I just wanted to put out. Rear-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, non-HDs, they are different, I'm pretty sure. And even if they're not, which in my experience they are, yeah, it's worth it to just put the HDs on, because your angles will be similar to original. And yeah, and then the other parts will be more readily available also. So yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it, guys.